Hi friends, welcome to this much awaited video covering the paper that had been missing all over the internet due to copyright restrictions. I will walk you through how to approach comprehension questions for an O-level English paper. I'll explain how I arrived at the answers and the strategies you can use to tackle similar questions. I will not only walk you through the entire paper but also explain step by step how to approach the questions and how I arrived at the correct answers. Whether you have been searching for this for a while or are just looking to improve your understanding, you're in the right place. Before we get started, I kindly request you to please subscribe to my channel, share this video. It took a lot of effort to bring you this paper, and while some of the text has been slightly modified due to copyright restrictions, it still provides everything you need to solve the paper and enhance your comprehension practice skills. Your support means a lot, so let's dive in and make the most of this opportunity. Don't forget to leave a comment below letting me know how you found this content of the video, and stay tuned for more. If there are any papers you need, feel free to mention them in the comments as well. I'll do my best to bring them to you. Let's get started. This passage describes the writer's experience navigating the icy waters of the northern Canada, where he faces various challenges such as fierce winds, difficult terrain, and powerful rapids. The writer's emotions and observations are the key to understanding the text. Let's get a reading of this passage with the meanings, and I have created some AI visuals so that you can understand the situation well and it enhance your knowledge as well.
Text A, the North Shore. The writer is attempting to navigate his way alone in a canoe across northern Canada's mainland Arctic. At this point in his story, he is traveling the length of a huge lake. Despairingly, I swung my paddle again into the icy water, the fierce wind driving me towards the land. I had to find somewhere to make camp, the gusts were growing too strong to continue. Ahead on the north shore, the one I'd been faintly tracing out in my canoe, there seemed to be a small bit of grass between the ancient boulders. It was perhaps not what most people would consider an attractive campsite, but to me, just now, it looked inviting. I headed for it. Shoals jutted into the water, forcing me to paddle into the wind to get around them. It was fall now, the winds were fierce and steady, and frost was in the air. Winter would soon be on its way. When at last I came to the grass amid the rocks, the first such place I'd seen for many inhospitable kilometers, I made camp and staked down my tent, securing it with extra guy lines. Then I carried up my canoe, worn, battered, almost paper-thin now from months of grinding against the rocks and ice floes, and overturned it beside the tent. "Just a little longer, my old friend," I whispered, looking at my old canoe. "If you can last just a little longer without puncturing, we can finish our journey." The wind's howling grew louder, whipping up whitecaps that smashed into the barren shore. I was thankful to have found this lonely spot among the rocks when I did. Across the lake's turbulent water rose a range of gracefully sloped mountains. I'd heard of canoeing parties being windbound on these vast stormy lakes for weeks at a stretch. It was not an encouraging thought. Ahead of me, to the east, lay powerful river rapids. Unlucky travelers had been known to drown in them. And if I were to complete my journey, I'd have to navigate them late in the season, when the weather was bad. That night, the wind blew ceaselessly, shaking my little tent as I lay huddled inside. I pinned my hopes of escape on the morning calm, but the dawn brought no respite. The skies were gray and dismal, the gales as unrelenting as ever. All day, I waited anxiously for a break in the wind that would enable me to launch my canoe and leave the point I'd camped on. None came. The frigid gusts seemed only to grow stronger, howling eerily across the lifeless tundra. A second night passed with me still stranded in the same spot. Growing more anxious, I watched as yet another day slipped away without any break in the wind and waves, which made paddling impossible and me trapped on that rock-strewn point. And each day lost, I knew, was a day closer to winter's onset. Winter onset. Out here, in the empty vastness of heart of the Arctic, time seemed end. It struck me that you could live 1,000 lifetimes and not even begin to scratch the surface of paddling all the possibilities. But I couldn't afford to dwell on the endlessness of it all. For me, it was paramount to devise the most efficient route I could. The landscape before me stretched like a complex web of waterways. Looking at what at first glance appeared to be an incomprehensible labyrinth, a puzzle of lakes and ponds, I realized it could be deliciously challenging not to confuse one bay or inlet for any of the thousands of others. The wind had grown stronger, a constant force pushing against me as I paddled. My muscles ached with the effort, but stopping wasn't an option, not with the rapids ahead. The water had turned colder, its icy grip tightening with each passing hour, and the roar of the river grew louder. I could feel the tension rising, knowing that one wrong move could spell disaster. Roaring, swirling, foaming water pulling back and forth on my boots made holding on to the canoe, while struggling to maintain my balance, almost impossible. The force of the current felt unstoppable, and I could barely keep my footing as I fought to hold on to the canoe, the freezing water stinging my skin. Each stroke of the paddle became a battle against the elements, as if the Arctic itself was daring me to keep going. As the river's fury subsided momentarily, I allowed myself a brief moment to gather my breath, grateful for the brief reprieve. The roar of the rapids faded, leaving only the soft murmur of water nearby. My heart still raced, but the danger was behind me. I took in my surroundings, scanning the rugged landscape. The vast wilderness stretched endlessly, each hidden corner seeming to hold its own mystery. Then, as though nature was offering a brief moment of mercy, the stormy haze lifted. The haze cleared to reveal a fairy tale landscape, vivid green hills, jumbles of boulders beyond counting scattered about, and little streams crashing a path down the craggy hillsides. Behind me rose towering great gray cliffs of rock, old as time, the oldest rock on the planet, so cracked with fault lines as to give the suggestion of ancient crumbling castle ruins. Drifting into this timeless world, I could picture dinosaurs roaming about amid the rocks that were eons older than even those giant reptiles. More and more, it seemed like a land time forgot.
Okay, let's start with question number 1A. In paragraph 1, give one reason why it was difficult for the writer to paddle his canoe in the icy water. If you look at this question and understand that this is a fact-based questions, these kind of questions ask for specific factual details directly from the text. The answer lies in the description of the wind's force pushing the canoe towards the land, which is stated in the passage as a fierce wind driving me towards the land. To answer such type of questions, you will always have to look for specific details mentioned in the passage. And one more thing I would add is that don't add any interpretation, just extract the fact as it appears in the passage. For question 1b, using your own words, explain what the text means by faintly tracing. Now this is a meaning based questions. This is to test your ability to understand words and phrases in the context. The phrase faintly tracing refers to the writer's difficulty in following the outline of the shore due to poor visibility. To answer this question, you need to interpret the idea of faintly as something barely visible and tracing as following a path. To answer this type of question, you have to rephrase the term and expression using simpler words and be sure that your explanation fit the context in which the term is used. You can also use context clues from surrounding sentences to understand the meaning of to answer such type of question. For question 1c, from paragraph 2, identify the one feature of the North Shore that made it difficult to find a place to camp there. Explain the reason why this feature made it difficult to camp. Now, this type of question is a cause and effect question. It asks why a certain feature causes specific difficulties. These questions require you to think about why something happened. Now, in this question, the boulders were a feature that made it hard to camp. But just identifying the boulders is not enough. You also need to explain why. In this case, the boulders took up most of the shore, leaving no flat ground for the writer to set up his tent. You have to show how you look beyond just identifying the feature and connect it to the explanation. For this type of question, you have to identify the cause, that is the feature first, and then explain the effect, why it made camping difficult. Also focus on the logical relationship between the feature and the difficulty. In general, you can answer such type of questions by identifying why and how in the passage. Always explain your passage or your answer with reasoning in full sentences. For question 1D, from paragraph 3, give 2 things that the writer did to guard against the effects of the wind. This is a fact-based question as well as an action-based question, which asks what actions the writer took to solve a problem. Action-based questions focus on identifying concrete steps or measures described in the text. The writer staked down his tent and secured it with extra guidelines. These 2 actions are directly mentioned in the passage as precautions against the wind. To answer such a type of questions, you have to identify and list specific actions mentioned in the passage. Also, you have to stay focused on the actions directly relevant to the question and make sure to provide all the actions requested, like in this case there were 2. Question 1E. Explain what the writer was thinking when he whispered, "Just a little longer, my old friend." This is an interpretation question. This requires you to explore the writer's thoughts or feelings and understand what they might mean beyond the literal words. The writer was worried about the condition of his canoe and he hoped it would last for the rest of the journey. The canoe was an old friend, indicating its importance and sentimental value to the writer because it had been with him through many adventures. When this type of question comes, you have to think about the emotions or reasoning behind the character's thoughts. Focus on what is implied by the phrase, why the canoe is called an old friend, and why the writer's worries might be. You can also look for the clues in the passage that help explain the writer's mindset at that time. But you have to keep your answer concise and clear, focusing on the emotions or sentiments that are expressed. Question 1F. In paragraph 4, how did the writer feel about the weather conditions as he sat in his tent that evening? Give 2 details from the text to support your answer. This is an inference-based question, asking you to deduce the writer's feelings based on the information provided. Like in the previous question, you have to interpret what he was thinking or feeling, but in this you have to deduce, you have yourself to infer what he was feeling through some information that is provided in the passage. Like in this question, you need to infer the writer's feelings based on the description of the weather and how it affected him. The writer felt anxious and trapped due to relentless wind. The passage states the wind blew ceaselessly and the skies were grey and dismal, which are clues to his feelings of frustration and entrapment and his being anxious due to hard weather conditions. To answer such questions, you have to pay attention and identify descriptive key phrases or phrases that indicate emotions or moods. Provide specific textual details from the text to support your inference. Make sure your inference aligns with the mood or tone created by the description in the passage. Question 1G, Part 1. During the night, the writer realized that he might have a particular problem getting past the powerful river rapids. What was the problem? This is a problem and solution question where you need to recognize the challenge and issue the writer is facing based on the text. The problem was that the rapids were dangerous and difficult to navigate, especially in the poor weather conditions and the lateness of the season which the writer was going to experience. And there were many parties who had been known to have drowned in them. To answer this type of questions, you have to focus on identifying the specific issue mentioned in the passage. Don't overthink and also avoid adding unnecessary interpretation. Just address the problem as stated in the passage. Now with the next part of this question. What did he want to do to avoid the problem? This is again a problem solving question where you need to figure out what action the writer was planning to avoid a particular issue. The writer wanted to get through the river rapids early in the morning when the water levels might be lower and the conditions would be safer for paddling through the powerful rapids. For this question, you have to look for any proactive action or solution the writer is planning in the text and focus on how the writer intends to overcome or avoid the problem, like in this case, the dangerous rapids. Also, keep your answer concise and directly connected to the action the writer wants to take. Explain using your own words the writer's different feelings about the place where he decided to make camp. Give 3 details from anywhere in the text to support your answer. This question is an emotional response question. This asks for interpretation of the writer's feelings about the camp location, and it has to be supported by evidence from the text. This question is not confined to some one paragraph or a few lines. This has to be inferred from the starting 3 to 4 paragraphs in which the writer's feelings change from positivity to negativity. I shall describe it as that the writer had mixed emotions about the campsite. On one hand, he felt a sense of peace and connection to nature, enjoying the beauty and solitude of the place. While on the other hand, he is also concerned about the harsh weather and the difficult terrain, which might make the stay uncomfortable or unsafe. Uh, the writer experienced a combination of relief and surprise at first when he found a small grassy spot after navigating difficult topography. The sight of the gracefully sloped mountains and the vast emptiness around him made the location seem peaceful and beautiful to him. However, these positive feelings shifted to anxiety and worry as he realized the strong winds could trap him there for weeks. Despite some comfort from the rocks offering protection, the harsh environment made him feel vulnerable and isolated. To answer such type of questions, you have to identify more than one feeling, positive and negative, for example, and you have to support your interpretation with specific details from the different parts of the passage. To explain these, you have to use your own words to express the writer's complex emotional response to the place and make sure to connect it back to the text. Question 2a. What does the writer want to suggest to us about how he feels about paddling in the northern Canada? This question is a complex emotion and opinion question. This is asking you to explore the writer's deeper feelings. The writer feels that paddling in northern Canada is an awe inspiring and endless adventure. The phrase from which you could infer this is, "You could live 1,000 lifetimes and not even begin to scratch the surface," shows that his sense of wonder and excitement about the limitless exploration opportunities in the northern Canada. To answer this type of question, you have to focus on the figurative or emotional language used by the writer to convey his feelings and emotional response to the situation. You have also to keep your answer focused on the writer's opinion, not just the literal meaning of the sentence. Question 2b. Explain why the writer uses the phrase most efficient rather than the word efficient in the expression. To devise the most efficient route I could. This question is language choice question. This question is there to ask you to analyze why a specific word or phrase is used in a particular way. By using most efficient, the writer emphasizes that he was trying to find the best possible route, not just any route that was efficient. This phrase shows his determination to choose the optimal path. Like, you see, there's a situation in which he can give one shot and he want this to be his best. To answer this type of question, you have to pay attention to the impact of specific word choices. Like, here you can consider what the added word or phrase, like in this case most, contributes to the meaning or tone of the phrase. Question 2c. What two impressions does the writer want to convey to the reader in the sentence? Looking at what at first glance appeared to be an incomprehensible labyrinth, a puzzle of lakes and ponds, I realized it could be deliciously challenging not to confuse one bay or inlet for any of the thousands of others. This question is an impression based question. It is asking you to interpret the writer's feelings or thoughts about what he sees, and then you have to convey them in your own words. In this question, the writer conveys two impressions. He initially feels overwhelmed by the complexity of the landscape, describing it as an incomprehensible labyrinth of lakes and ponds, which suggests that he has a feeling or thoughts of confusion and difficulty. While he also finds it challenging and enjoyable, as he describes it, saying deliciously challenging, showing that his excitement about the adventure ahead would be joyous to him. This type of questions can be answered by identifying the contrasting impressions, one of the difficulty and one of the enjoyment. And you have to make sure both your impressions are distinct and clearly explained. Also look for emotional or descriptive words in the sentence to help identify the impressions. Question 2d. What effect does the writer want to suggest about the water by using the words roaring, swirling, and foaming? Now this question require you to analyze the writer's language to create an impression. This is a sensory imagery question. It focuses on how language creates an effect on the reader's senses, especially hearing and sight. The words roaring, swirling, and foaming suggest that the water is very powerful, turbulent, and it is very aggressive. The writer wants to convey a sense of danger and difficulty, as the water is not calm but chaotic, making it hard to maintain balance for him. In this question, you have to focus on sensory image created by the chosen words, auditory and visual. Also, how the words make you feel or visualize the scene. Describe how each word enhances the sense of chaos and danger. Make sure your answer reflects the intense and uncontrollable nature of the water. In general, to answer this type of question, you have to highlight the words in the passage that show how they create an impression, and you have to also focus on imagery and descriptive language. 2e. Identify one example of how the writer uses language effectively to convey his feelings as the morning haze clears in this extract. After this, we are given the last few lines, the last paragraph of the passage. This question is the language analysis question, where you need to pick out an example of the effective use of language and explain how it conveys the writer's feelings or emotions. There are many examples of the effective use of language in this paragraph, but like we select the haze clear to reveal a fairy tale landscape. In this sentence, the phrase fairy tale landscape creates a sense of wonder and enchantment. This suggests that the writer is in awe of the beauty of the natural world, while the use of fairy tale evokes images of a magical, untouched place, showing how deeply impressed the writer is, and and that he almost feels transported by having a look at this scenery. In this question, you have to select an example that clearly reflects the writer's emotional reaction. You have to focus on the connotations of the chosen word. How do they make the writer feel? And you also have to ensure that your explanation connects the language used with the writer's feeling about the scene. To effectively answer the questions about how the writer uses language effectively to convey his feelings, I'll give you a general framework, a few steps to follow so that you can answer this type of question whenever it appears in your comprehension paper. The first step is that you read carefully. You have to pay close attention to the extract and identify phrases or words that stand out, that are not used in simple way of communication. The words or phrases that are not used when you convey something in using simple and ordinary language. The second is that you have to identify the key examples. For this, you have to look for vivid imagery, sensory details, metaphors, similes, personifications, anything that evoke emotions or set a mood. You can underline them or you can highlight them. You can just take them out. That what mood do they give you when you read them? After that, the third step is that you have to explain that effect. Describe how the identified language creates a specific feeling or impression. Consider like what emotion does it evoke. For example, it does it create an awe, danger, beauty. What is the kind of emotion that you feel when you read this? And also that how does it enhance the reader's understanding of the writer's experience? Why did not the writer use some other word instead of this word? What is the intensity of this word? What intensity did it create? After that, the fourth step is that you have to use the specific lines or phrases from the text to support your answer, to back up your analysis. You can also paraphrase to illustrate your points. And the last step is that you structure your response. You state that example and you explain its effects on the reader and emotions it conveys. In this, the example, the writer describes the landscape as a fairy tale landscape which conveys a sense of magic as well as beauty. And the effect that is create is that an enchanting world. It evokes feeling of wonder and excitement as the writer experiences the scenery. Now, I'll give you some general guidelines of how to successfully answer the comprehension questions. Always remember to identify the key details from the passage. Rephrase your words or phrases in your own words when necessary. And also explain why something happens, not just what happens. And pay close attention to the writer's tone and choice of his words. With the careful reading and practice, I hope you can master comprehension skills like that. Take your time to break down the passage and don't hesitate to rephrase parts for better understanding. Good luck.